Hey everyone, my name is Spin and today we're going to be talking about crosshair settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through all the crosshair settings one by one and talk about why each one is important and how to customize it. I'm going to skip the whole intro thing and just say, hey, if you like this, subscribe. Okay, the first one here is Crosshair Color. Now, if you have an outline around your crosshair, this one doesn't matter so much. I like to use cyan, but just keep in mind, if you use something like green and you do not have an outline here, if you pop say Viper's wall, at certain parts in her wall, it might be kind of hard to see the crosshair here. So just be careful with what color you choose and use an outline. Okay, so outline. Everyone's different and we kind of just went over why the outline matters. It can help distinguish your crosshair in moments where the crosshair might blend in with the environment. I like to keep mine all the way at 1, but you could turn it down a little bit to 50% here to 0.5 if that makes more sense for you. For outline thickness, I can't see any reason to go past 1. I play at 1440p, so that pixel is even smaller, but it seems to get the job done for even me. So if you're playing at 1080p, that pixel is going to be a little bit bigger. So again, going past 1, I don't totally recommend it. Center dot is kind of tricky. If you're a new player and you feel more comfortable with the center dot, I say go for it. But keep in mind, there's no true center pixel of your screen. So if you're using an odd number for the thickness of your center dot, it's not going to be the true center. So you have to modify your center dot thickness to be 2 or 4 or else it's not going to be the true center. Fade crosshair with firing error. This one's really interesting and I like to play with this one on. What this means is as you fire your crosshair, the top part of your crosshair will go away so you can focus on your tracers and make sure to adjust properly. Let me show you right here. Okay, pay attention to the top part of the crosshair. See how it disappears? It does that so I can focus on the tracers and adjust my weapon accordingly. Show spectated players crosshair. I say leave this on. It's fun to see what other players are using. Okay, inner lines. The inner line opacity is basically just the opacity of my crosshair as it currently is. So as I put it down, it goes down. Easy. Inner line length. This one is really interesting and important for new players. So if you're new to the FPS genre or you're new to the tactical shooter genre, I say bump this thing up a little bit. The more you bump up the length of the crosshair, the more you'll have a reference for when you need to do a micro flick. This is kind of an extreme example, but let's say my crosshair is right here and I need to flick over to this opponent right here. Well, because my crosshair is kind of long, it should be kind of easy to draw a straight line and know that I have to just go mainly horizontal to go from here to here. The inner line thickness is really up to you. I use 2, but I see some people using 1 and I also see some people using 3. Any of these is fine, but going past 3 is where things kind of get extreme, especially if you're playing on 1080p. You don't want your crosshair to take up too much of your screen because you want to be able to see your opponents and focus less on your actual crosshair. So crosshair offset is really important too. I like to keep mine at 5, but some players like to play with it lower. Just keep in mind, if you put the offset all the way at 0, the crosshair basically becomes obviously a cross. But the problem with this is you can't actually see the true center of your screen. So if you put it right over an enemy's head, you might not be able to see the actual head that you're aiming at, which is problematic. But if you make the offset too big, you won't know exactly where the center of your screen is unless you have a center dot. Movement error and firing error are the 2 biggest things for new players. I'm going to turn on the movement error and show you what that is. What the movement error does is it shows you how accurate you are with each weapon when you're moving in different states. So for example, I'm moving with the Phantom right now, and as I walk, there's a little bit of a movement error, and when I run, there's a lot of movement error. But when I have the op, obviously when I move, the movement error is massive, and when I walk, the movement error is still really large. This is super useful if you're relatively new to Valorant and you haven't mastered all the weapons yet. It can give you a really good idea of how each of the weapons perform. So what firing error does is as you shoot, it widens the crosshair to show you how accurate your next shot is going to be. Obviously, if you've just been doing a long burst, your weapon is no longer going to be accurate, and the firing error shows that. So if I start to burst here, see how the crosshair gets wider as I fire? It basically is telling me that my next shot is not going to be that accurate. But once my crosshair resets, I know that the weapon is completely reset and my next shot will be accurate if I'm standing still. As the crosshair gets wider, I know that my next shot's not going to be accurate. But once it's fully reset, I'm good to go, and I know that I'm ready for my next burst. This could be really useful for new players, but if you're a veteran and you use this, I say don't be embarrassed and just lean into it. I mean, knowing when your weapon is reset is a useful thing, whether or not you're a pro, so I would not be embarrassed about it. But here's what I will say. If you're gonna use the movement error or the firing error, use it on the outer line. So let's get into the outer lines. The outer lines is basically another set of crosshair, which is super useful that you can add to give yourself more information on your crosshair. So let's add an outer line onto our crosshair. I'm gonna drag the length up to 1 here, and I'm gonna make sure my opacity is up here. And there it is. You can see that we've added a tiny outer line onto our crosshair. Now, if I turn on movement error and firing error, now I can turn off my movement error and firing error on my inner line. What this will do is it'll create a crosshair where my inner lines are stationary, which is good, but my outer lines will give me information on how I'm moving and how I'm firing. Let's take a look at it right here. See, as I move around, my outer lines is giving me information on how accurate I'm gonna be, and as I fire, my outer lines move as well. I think this crosshair right here could be super useful for beginner or intermediate players. The outer lines give you a lot of information about how you're moving and how you're firing and how accurate your next shot will be. And the length of the inner lines give you a decent reference for where you need to move the crosshair to get your next shot off. I think the cyan is a great color because it's not a color that's used frequently in the game. And that 1 pixel black outline really makes it stand out so you won't get it confused with anything else in the game. I actually just made this crosshair on the fly with you guys, but I'm gonna actually take a picture of it right now and post it in the description. Hey everybody, my name is Spin and I'm trying to record my outro while I shoot these heads. If you like this kind of content, please go ahead and like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. I hope that you are doing well and I hope that you're safe during this pandemic. Peace and love, everybody.